Hi, everyone. I'm Camille Miller, and I am the Executive Director of the Natural Life Business Partnership. And today we're doing a member spotlight with charter member Marie Higgins. She is the author of Spiritual Journaling, and she will be talking to us today, which is March 28th of 2018, about spiritual journaling. Marie, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. So excited.
If you can tell us a little bit about your book and about spiritual journaling overall. We'd love to hear a little bit.
Absolutely. So I am an author and a teacher of holistic practices, including meditation and spiritual journaling. And I will talk about spiritual journaling today. And to talk about it, I need to give a little bit of background about where I've come from and who I am. And I'm going to start with my previous career. I was in corporate America for almost 20 years. Loved the field of human resources. I did a lot of recruiting and hired people. But once I had my children and my husband was established in his practice, I was feeling ready to leave the business world and start a new adventure. So I kept saying, in 3 more years, I'll quit. In 3 more years, I'll quit, being very fearful of, well, what happens if something bad happens, or what happens if this, or what happens if that? And so I kept putting it off and putting it off. And I really felt a physical and a spiritual hardening of my heart. And my mantra, in 3 more years, I'll quit, eventually did change. And that happened in 2008. In the spring, I went to the dermatologist and was diagnosed with a phase 0 melanoma, which is an in situ. It's at the surface. It's really not a big deal. In fact, it's so no big deal that I went in for outpatient surgery and I went back to work the next day and went back to, in 3 more years, I'll quit. Well, fast forward just a couple of months, and unfortunately, my sister-in-law, who was 45 at the time, she was diagnosed with end-stage melanoma. And because I think it was the same diagnosis as mine, just a different stage, it really hit me hard. And within 8 months, she had passed away at the age of 46. And during that time, my mantra changed from 3 more years, I'll quit, to I only have 1 life to live. And at the same time, my husband was very unhappy with his career as well. So there was a lot of things circling with, this probably isn't the right time. Maybe one of us should leave and not the other, and figure it out. But I think we were so ensconced in our business days that it was really hard to see anything. So Terry died March 11th, 2009, and I just felt this extreme calling. And on April 1st, April Fool's Day, I actually gave a 2-month notice and said that I was leaving, that I had no idea what I was going to do, but that I was very excited about it. Well, the month after I left, my husband was having the same thing that I was having in terms of, unhappiness in his current field. And so in August, he sold his practice back to his partners. And we were both lost. We were very lost. We didn't have active income. We had savings to work on. And so what do you do? Well, we were invited to do spiritual direction, and we met with a woman individually, and then sometimes we would come together. And she would teach us ways to pray and different ways of dealing with our current situation, bringing spirit or God into it. And I started to journal during that time. And one of the things that happened with this person is that when I would go and I would say, well, what about this? And what about that? She would say, well, don't ask me. You need to ask God or spirit about that. And so eventually that got into my journaling practice. So that's what I want to talk about today. How is it that I journal? What exactly is spiritual journaling? What are the tools that you use? And what are some of the outcomes that I've experienced? Because I want to say that for each person, it's a very different process. What we're going to write about is going to be different. What our backgrounds, beliefs, all of that's going to be different. But it doesn't matter, because each of us has a true self and a spirit. So one of the disclaimers that I use is that I use the term God or Spirit. It's just easier for me. It's my upbringing. For some people, it might be Allah or self, sensibility, Jesus, whoever it is that you pray to, that's fine. That's who you direct the question to. So for today, I'm going to say God or Spirit. So in my journaling practice, and it has changed over the years, and I'll talk about that a little bit as well. But in the beginning, I wrote down anything that was on my heart or in my head. You know, all the stupid crap that's in our heads every day, whether it's our to-do list or, you know, our frustrations, our worries, things that are going well, you know, could be prayers or any of those things. I would write them down in my book. And eventually I would see that I had different categories of things in my journal. So this is what my journal looks like. And again, you can do it however you want. But I have read a lot of spiritual and self-help books over the years. And I love the ones that ask questions and actually have activities. So books like The Artist's Way or The Sabbath or God is Always Hiring by Regina Brett. In fact, hers is an example that I want to give now, that she talked in her book about writing our own obituary. And I thought, wow, that's really pulling at my heartstrings. I want to write my obituary. And it's in my journals, and I have it for my own use and record. And my obituary talks about how I'm not the best at any one thing, but boy, do I try. I'm like the little engine that could, you know, I put myself out there and I try. And so that's what this obituary is about. So I have a lot of things in my journals about exercises from self-help books. I also write gratitude lists. And the reason why that happened is that when I was meeting with the spiritual director, I told her, I am not able to sleep at night. I'm waking up worried and I just can't go back to sleep. And she said, come up with a gratitude list of 10 things, just lying in bed, mental gratitude list, and it will help. So I went back to her the next week and I said, that didn't help. What was that supposed to do? And so she looked at me and she said, all right, smarty pants. I think she used an expletive, but come up with 36 things. And so I started to lay in bed at night and come up with 36 things from the day before that I was thankful for. And that's been a process that has grown into, I did end up sleeping at night, woke up the next morning actually being disappointed that I didn't make a gratitude list. So I would do that before I got out of bed. And then when I determined that I wanted to go back to school for massage, and I'm a licensed massage therapist now, you know, I was focusing on my business, and I would jump out of bed in the morning. And so I would feel called sometimes to actually write gratitude lists in my journal. So I have a lot, probably hundreds of gratitude lists written in my journals. And you know, I also have insights gleaned from doing different spiritual disciplines. So for example, that spiritual director, she would recommend walking meditation or different types of prayers, like the Acts prayer, which is the accolades, confessions, thanksgiving, and supplication, and you would write your list down. So that's just an example of different types of prayers that I would put in my book and in my journals. And then any miscellaneous things, you know, if I had something that I wanted to remember to do, I would just write 3 or 4 pages ahead in my journal, make sure I do this. And so it was a way of keeping my action items as well. But the golden nugget, what I have found with spiritual journaling is that the most important part of the journaling then is, after I feel like I have just spewed everything from my heart and my head, I write the question, God, what else should I know? And that's the contemplative, quiet space where you can sit and wait to hear what's on your heart. Or if you're like me, sometimes, you know, the sitting in the quiet, I have found that I want quicker answers. I mean, I'm a modern woman, right? I want quick answers. So I started to use the the Bible and the book of Psalms. And then I eventually found this book. It's called Psalms for Praying by Nan Merrill. And she actually rewrote all of the Psalms in modern day language. And so it's a beautiful way that I would just open to a page and read what the Psalm said, and then write down what related to what I had already written in my journal, and knew that that was what God wanted me to know. I use all sorts of tools, whatever is in front of me. Like right now, when I opened up the book of Psalms, I found a meditation card. Maybe that's what I need to have for today. Well, and this says accept life's challenges, which is a perfect card for me today. Also, if you like books that have daily affirmations or daily readings, Mark Nepo's book, the Book of Awakening, is a wonderful one. And you can see that, another meditation card, but you just open it up and you read whatever page you're looking at, read that. And I guarantee that there are things in there that relate to what's on your heart or in your head. And part of the magic is that sometimes I have something that's on my heart that I don't write about. And I read the page and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, now I have to write about that, because I didn't really feel like writing about that in my journal today, but obviously Spirit is asking me to do that. So it's time to do that. And then, as you can see, I have these meditation cards. My practice is that with every client that I see, I offer them an opportunity at the end of their session with me to pick a meditation card. And what I've come to believe is that the card that they pick is the card that is meant for them. They cannot give it back. They, what they decide to do with it when they leave it is fine, but that the message is for them. And people will say it's their favorite part of coming to me, that they can't wait to hear the message, that it's always spot on, because I think Spirit is always in front of us and is going to use the people that are in front of each of us. And so I'm in front of my clients. I give them a meditation card. It's what they're meant to hear for the day. Some of the outcomes of spiritual journaling for me is in the looking back. I can look back at my journals, and that's actually how I wrote my book, was looking back in my journals. But that started with asking God for a prompt that I really thought that I could write. And I was at an overnight retreat, and I had my journals with me, and I started to look through them. And what I found were these gratitude lists, and what I heard was write a poem. So I wrote a poem for the first gratitude list, and then I would look back and I found another poem and another gratitude list, and I would write another poem. So in this book, there are about 30 poems that people can use for walking meditation, which is explained in the book as well. But, the magic for me is that the memoir part of the book, I already know that's written on my heart. I don't need to read that because I know the story. I know that it benefits a lot of other people in reading about my career transition and reading about a leap of faith, about trusting Spirit. For me, what I said after the book was published is, oh my gosh, it has my poems. It houses my poems, and I just find them to be so amazing. They create a mood. And so what I've been doing is I have been doing workshops on creativity comes from gratitude. And I've created this program of different categories of gratitude. And I walk people through, I tell them the same thing. Let's start with a list of 10 things from the day before. And then I tell them, okay, now we're going to do 36. And of course, they all groan. And then I tell them it's really not so hard. There are categories, the people that you met that you were grateful for the day before, things that you're looking forward to, things that are on your list every day. Like for me, it's myself, my husband, my 2 children, and that God is in my life, things that I'm looking forward to. And then I list those things, people, places, out in nature. And then I teach them a couple of different methods for writing poetry. And then I ask them to reread their gratitude list and pick a topic. And then using the words from a method that I have taught on poetry, they write poems, and their feelings at the end are the same as mine about this fullness, this well of just gratitude that comes from writing the poetry. It's a connection to spirit. And when they read these poems that are based on their gratitude, it just fills the room. So for me, it's been a magical process. And I don't know what else is going to come from doing my journals, but it's the looking back is so valuable. If you're not someone that journals, I recommend that you start today. When I was starting to think I wanted to be a writer, and I read Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic, and she talked about how she wrote a wedding contract with herself and her writing at 21. I thought, well, I'm in my late 40s. It's too late. What am I going to do? Then I got the message that I was going to have two adventures, and one was going to be the massage business, and the other one was going to be in the looking back. And I didn't know what that meant for a long time until I started to write my book and I was looking back in my journals. So I keep writing in my journals. It's a daily practice. Right now, I don't have as much on my heart and in my head that I write, because I think meditation is helping me to control those aberrant thoughts, those thoughts about me not being good enough, and that. Although, sometimes the writing does take me there. But right now I'm doing what's called inspirational writing, and Sonia Choquette, author of The Psychic Pathway, is the teacher of that method. And so that's what's been in my journal the past week, is writing a letter to my higher power, higher self, I think she calls it. And then I meditate for 6 minutes, and then I write a letter from my higher self back to myself. And it's been amazing. And I know if I do it for a month and then I look back, I'm going to see patterns and experiences, and God's going to lead me to the next step.
Very nice.
Long answer to a short question.
Well, I wrote that to say happy anniversary. It's almost April 1st.
Thank you. Yes. Woohoo!
That's a difference. How long ago was that?
That was in 2009 that I gave my notice. So it's been 9 years. Yeah, it's amazing how fast time flies. And what I'm finding is that I have the same challenges that I had before, in terms of knowing that there's something else out there for me, and still knowing that my life's purpose, part of it is the massage and the interactions that I have with people, but that there's something else for me, and I just need to be patient. I'm seeing little things, but I have to remind myself to have faith that if I say, the will of spirit be done, then I just know that it's happening. I just have to wait patiently, which it's hard to be human, right?
Exactly. So Paul has written in a question. It says, how long do you take when you are writing? Is it a set time, or do you just write for as long as it flows to you?
So my practice is that I try to do it in the morning if I can. If I can't get to it in the morning, then I'll feel a nudge later in the day when I have a little bit of space, and I will write. But typically, I am a morning person, and I get up before anyone else in the house. And I think that's important, is to find a place of stillness and quiet. And then I just write, what comes to me. Sometimes it's very short, and sometimes I already know that, I'm doing a practice like this morning with the writing a letter from myself to my higher self, 6 minutes of meditation, and then writing a response from my higher self. That process probably took 20 minutes. And I would say generally it's at least 20 minutes. Sometimes I can be there for an hour, just because I'm really enjoying myself. At this point, sometimes I'm writing poems. So, I can spend quite a bit of time. And then normally there's some interruption, right? So this morning I actually didn't journal until after I finished some business around 10 a.m. And then my daughter called me. So, that just ended the session early, and I got back to it later. So you have to allow for life's interruptions, and you also have to not beat yourself up. Like when I teach meditation, people want to know the rules, and what I like to tell them is that you have to allow yourself to break the rules, because otherwise you'll never think that you're doing it right. So that's my suggestion to people is, if just sit down and do it. You just have to do it. And so if you can allot yourself 20 minutes, less than that I think is hard. So I have to be honest, I think at least 20 minutes.
For writing or meditation? For writing.
For the writing,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just what you were saying about meditation, for the longest time I thought I just wasn't doing it right. So I wanted this euphoric feeling that everyone kept talking about, or I was reading about, and I was like, and then it took someone else to say, yeah, that's not, everyone doesn't do that.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, a lot of times I just go in nature and I'm just quiet. Like I just quiet my mind, and they're like, that is meditation. And I'm like, oh, that I'm good at. Oh, I'm really good. I had no idea that when you're driving, and I was like, oh my God, all the time. You feel like you're in another world. It's just really, the trick was just quiet. To just
right. Give yourself permission to meander in whatever way you want. Yeah.
Yeah, people think it's so difficult. And it's not always.
Yeah.
So Paul wrote in another question. Do you actually write with paper and pen? And what are your thoughts on digital journaling?
I think digital journaling is fine. I have about 20 journals at this point. In the beginning, my journals, when I wasn't journaling every day, I one paper journal, it might be over a full year, but now I probably fill a journal in about 3 months time. And I like the handwritten part. I even, some of the exercises that are coming across my path, which would be different for someone who loves technology, but I just pulled a meditation card, a mindfulness card the other day about writing with my non-dominant hand. So then I did that in my journal and found what that was. But I have a niece who is 20, and she has started a journaling practice, and she asked me the same thing. She likes technology, and so she found something that she could use to do her journaling in a technological way. And I love that, because you could actually then do your whole thing by voice, right? You wouldn't you wouldn't even have to write it. So I don't think it matters. Some of us are auditory people, some of us are need the tactile thing. So we're also individualistic, that I don't have any recommendations for it has to be done this way. The value is just being able to look back at it. So just make sure you back up your electronic journals.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Does anyone else have any more questions? Oh, George has one. Wait, this is wonderful. How can potential clients identify that they need your service? What does your service to them look like?
So I am a teacher and a speaker. And so, for example, with teaching spiritual journaling or teaching meditation, I have, with the spiritual journaling, it's been 1, 2, or 3 sessions. And with the meditation, it's over 7 sessions that I generally do, but I can cater it to the individual or the practice. So for example, right now there's an acupuncturist near me who has just moved to a new studio, and they have this room that they want to offer classes. And so they've asked me to submit what type of classes I would offer. And they're small. It would be a perfect venue for maybe 10 people. But I can do larger audiences too. I speak to women's groups, predominantly at churches. I teach meditation at an adult evening school program also. So yes, sometimes it's coupled with people buying my book as part of it. And other times, it's done just, especially if it's local, I will just come because I like to share my story and teach about poetry and that sort of thing. So that's where I am right now. Generally, I get stipends, but I'm open to everything.
You do one-on-one counseling with people.
I do not do one-on-one
You do
counseling.
not. Okay.
No. Mm-mm.
I was
No,
gonna say,
I don't have a license for counseling, so I don't do that. I mean, I would be happy to meet with people one-on-one to teach them the practice of spiritual journaling.
that's what I meant. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I meant.
absolutely.
Yeah. Now you know how to use Zoom.
Yes, now I know how to use
Really,
Zoom. Exactly.
nationally, you can help anybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like how you think.
Yes. Yeah. I think it was Dale Carnegie, but I'm not sure now, who said, when you serve, you always have to think of how to serve the most amount of people because you have such limited time. If you just did one-on-one all the time, how can you serve at the greatest potential?
Well, and part of the reason originally I was looking at some different avenues to use creativity, and I'm very specific with my intentions. And what I said to God is that I would like to make money while I'm sleeping. I would like to work and create a wonderful product and then make money while I'm sleeping. And I have had some book sales around the world, so I know I'm sleeping when people are purchasing the book. And then I have time during the day one-on-one with my clients in my massage studio, and that fulfills a different side of me. But I love that people can learn about spiritual journaling without me even being present.
Right. Love it. All right. Well, does anyone have any more questions before we end the session? No. Well, thanks so much, Marie, for coming on and telling us about your spiritual journaling and your journey itself, which has been very inspiring for all of us.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. All right. We're going to say goodbye.
Bye.
And end the recording. Thank you.